Welcome to the latest episode of the Low Production High Value Show, a show for and about entrepreneurs.
Coming up on this episode, I talk to Bryce from Dot Fusion. We talk SEO, AEO, and headless CMS. If you're a content marketer, I think you're going to enjoy this. First of all, Bryce, welcome to the show. We're going to jump right into it if you're game.
Awesome. Can't wait. Happy Friday.
Cool. So in my research, I was like, wow, we've both been around a while. So most digital agencies from 1998 don't exist anymore.
That is.
What killed them and why didn't it kill yours?
Oh man, luck, resilience, kind of a keen disposition to figure out how to stay slightly ahead of the curve while translating the current technical situation with the customers and meeting them where they're at, I guess. I don't know. It's like definitely ups and downs and all over the place, but we stuck true to our central vibe, which is tech, art, and impact. And I've always been really feeling good when we're creating really beautiful digital stuff. And like back then it was CD-ROMs, but I like being at the intersection,
We're going way back.
We're going way back. Like this looks cool. And it's, there's some technical stuff going on in the back end. And then kind of halfway through our 25-year journey, we decided to add kind of impact to that triumvirate of ideals. Yeah, just staying true there. And things are going through another big change again.
Well, and I guess that sort of in broad terms, that sort of speaks to, I'll call it the experiential. Like you talk about it's beautiful or it's rich, it's artful, but it still kind of speaks to me as something causing some sort of emotional response. So
we're not just kind of developing back end applications kind of thing. We like stuff with a beautiful presentation and playing in that world.
You help them fall in love with their database.
Yeah, ideally.
With the
now it's not even a database, it's like vectorized stuff.
Well, I remember in 98 I was working for an e-commerce company, and our competitor in the e-commerce space had come up through CD-ROMs. They were selling product in an e-commerce sort of way, but via CD-ROM. The catalog was on CD-ROM, and they ported their catalog from CD-ROM to the web. Anyway, we're both dating ourselves. In the online experience and content management, when you're talking to a client and we were talking about a 25-year journey, and you've evolved yourself, you've seen clients evolve, but there are some clients that can be entrenched on a particular platform. And so when you meet them, and oftentimes we hear the phrase, meet them where they're at, but sometimes where they're at isn't the best place for them to be. Talk to me a little bit about how you would deal with that.
Yeah, well, the best place for them to be is dependent on a number of things. It isn't just the tech, it's the workflows and patterns of their operations and the legacy of the team and the emotional connection to the way something has always been. No problem with WordPress when used in the right spot, but for us, we do most of our migrations off old kind of what we call legacy system that like the more modern ways of doing things extend kind of beyond writing a page or a post and publishing it, dealing with much more complex content supply chains and workflows, of which kind of API-driven technology is just better for certain things. Sometimes it's just not going to happen for a variety of reasons, so you need to have a bit of a backup plan where you're helping customers optimize what they have. And there's certainly ways of doing that as well, too. So, yeah.
Are you starting with a discussion around like kind of the more fundamental, foundational things like what are your business objectives? And then marry that with, as you're saying, you're often doing a migration, but often it's not the technology, it's the culture and the willingness to migrate.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess pain's got to get up to a certain level, and then there's like, okay, we got to get at it.
The whole reason you're talking to them is because there's probably a pain point.
There's something not ideal going on, but we're a pretty like transparent and open group. Like we're like, hey, if your mission is this and your budget is that and your timeline is here, well, let's just fix what you got for right now and let's get you through the next phase. And then while we're getting through that phase, let's start talking about what the future looks like. And there's all kinds of ways of helping kind of organizations' web experiences perform better. I think that's essentially what we're up to, whether it's a migration and a net new project or better page health, better findability or discoverability or kind of the terms that we're using today, and just kind of content that people want to read and consume too. And I know that's part of your world too.
Hmm. Well, and you've got a proprietary methodology called Compass. Talk to us a little bit about that and how you take a client through that.
Yeah. And it's kind of like coming up with some names for stages that spell a word.
Everyone loves an acronym.
Absolutely. And it was cool because, hey, we're pointing you in the right direction. But just to boil it down, it does follow a similar pattern of thoroughly understanding not only the organization's kind of vision or objectives, but how those kind of objectives get down to the department level, I guess you would say, because we're satisfying somehow. And there's always like a fight and a new website for who owns the homepage, right? But we got product, we got marketing, we got all these different goals within the organization to accomplish. But we kind of boil it down to we know we need to be delivering a message and we know something that needs to happen when folks get to the site. Could be B2B, where you're looking through product information kits, ultimately getting a dealer to sell something to you. If it's B2C, there's kind of a transaction or a purchase right online. Could be a large hospital network that needs to be creating really great research and educational information from a healthcare perspective. So we'll kind of get down to the goals. And then we start building features and functions and kind of distilling all the hopes and dreams that the customer has within all the departments and get it on a big list. We're a bit like measure 3 times, cut once kind of company.
Right.
Predictable to finish, which is great. But it is a challenge for us where, marketing budgets are less these days. Folks think that if you're using AI to build and deploy large web or mobile apps, like you should be able to do it in half the time with like half the people. It's like, well, there's definitely benefits on one end for kind of cleanliness of code and code reviews, but we're not quite there where you press a button, some magic thing happens.
No, there still has to be humans in the equation.
Absolutely.
Well, and speaking of AI, now the rise of AEO, has that changed your or evolved your Compass methodology? What else is the rise of AEO meant to you and the work that you do?
Yeah, it's kind of found its place on the shelf beside SEO, and there's a lot of overlap with those two kind of performance, I guess, objectives. We kind of describe what we do as a little bit of a bookshelf kind of thing where a new or more performant website is kind of at the hub, but kind of in front of that is AEO, SEO, kind of discoverability, we'd call that, like how set up that content that's on your site so you get found. And there's process and best practice to that. And then
Right.
the other bookend is how do you get automations getting all of that content into the website at the end of the day from all of your content teams?
Well, the conversation I was having earlier in another context, but about Google having applied for a patent related to personalization, where right now when you do search, Google's giving you these AI summaries at the top of the landing page. Well, from what I've read about this patent that they've applied for, it's going to the next level or a step further, such that instead of getting Google results like we're accustomed to, albeit with these new AI summaries, you're now going to have a personalized landing page rendered in front of you based on your search criteria, meaning, or to like a Perplexity or whatever, your search query is going out or causing, if you're using Chrome, to go out, find the answers to your query, bring it back, render it in a personalized page, which leads to the question, will people still need a website if this personalized render of a new landing page that never existed before, unless someone had the same search criteria? I don't know the answer, but it strikes me as like, this is so, it's still in that realm of AI search and what it means to people that are trying to be discovered. I still personally think websites will be required, but your website might be delivering for you or playing a role later, not so much in the funnel, but later in the process, maybe if all this front end stuff is happening that's AI driven. I don't know, the speculation. I'm not a search guy.
Yeah, totally with you. I think where it'll have the biggest impact first is for small business. Great. Google's going to make a website out of a bunch of stuff I have in my Google Docs. And it's probably going to do a better job of like me and my pal running a small business. Great.
Yeah. Because if I'm a plumber, I don't need, and I'm not putting plumbers down, I don't need this ridiculously complex website. I just need to say I'm a plumber I do
Exactly.
this, and this is where I do it. Here's the phone number, and I just want to be found, and I want some Google My Business and Google reviews, and leave it at that.
And why not? And so what if Google says, look, pay us $10 and we'll do that for you? You know, why not? That makes a lot of sense to me. Those are the kind of projects that we would refer to someone to go build using kind of agentic website prompting stuff. Like, have some fun with it. All you need is a booking agent. Like, we do plumbing and we can book our dispatch and we'll get out there and fix your thing. So it really depends on the business application. For enterprise, where you've got integrations into product information, data warehouses, and customer data platforms, and all these kind of more complicated things, you know, inevitably that day will come, because anything to do with code or numbers, you know, AI is just going to take that over and own it. You know, and then what happens afterwards? It seems to me that there'll be kind of a rebellious movement to having your websites in a whole different ecosystem. So you're still kind of a cool place to go, but maybe it's this new thing that's off Google or some kind of, you never know what happens with culture and
Right.
trends and new things.
It sort of goes back to what I was saying about it plays a different role maybe further along. Using your enterprise examples, though, if someone's using ChatGPT for search, and I'll just use ChatGPT as an example, how do you advise an enterprise client to ensure or to give them comfort that just because someone's using ChatGPT search doesn't mean that you've lost them as a prospective client coming from search? How do you, I guess, explain it to them?
Yeah. So it is interesting. We spent 2 years experimenting with getting found in search, and I can just like say some stuff for folks listening.
Just on that, like, what was the 2-year experience like? Because a lot of people are still trying to figure it out. So
Yeah.
it sounds like it's some hard-won experience.
Yeah, just a lot of tinkering. It's easier now because you can make changes to your website without needing devs. So you can be running experiences or experiments as a marketer, kind of running right out of Plod into your whatever your website platform is. So it's basically probably 70% SEO best practices, but the real nugget is that you kind of want to reframe the copy on your website so it's in a really structured data format, and that it's there to answer common questions that people would have. One of the common questions, so we started from there. What is the common question? And you got to kind of pick one. So it's kind of like SEO. We have customers say like, our SEO sucks. And we're like, well, what phrases are you shooting for? And they actually don't know, right? So your brand is one thing, but you really want non-branded long tail keywords, and a lot of them to get people to your site. So ours is Best Headless Website Agency Canada. That's exactly what we do. If you type that in, you want us. So we did a lot of playing with that. I think we currently come up first in GTP and the other thing. But so to answer your question, structured data is really important. The data people don't see on the website, it's kind of code. It's called schema and metadata. AI is really great at writing it. Go through our site, write metadata and schema data for every page on the site. So that's helpful. Being cited, actually, I think it was a recommendation from you a couple of years ago to get clutch reviews. So we had a campaign over that 2 years, went back to all of our clients and now we're a 5-star. We're not kind of a mass agency. So even over 25 years, we probably only had like 100 customers kind of things.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a part of the workflow now, and it does come up because then you kind
It's
of
the 20 years to become an overnight success.
yeah. So slow and steady. But the really like surprising nugget was when I asked Chat, like, why did you position Fusion first for Best Headless Agency in Canada? And it said, because you say you are. So we had rewrote our website to create a bunch of services pages, and we just said, we're the best. Like, it's as simple as that.
Right. It's interesting because you hear people talk about AI looks for, in a sense, social proof or third-party validation. And just what you described is you being the third party validating you as the best headless agency. But that one word headless, is that enough of the for the long tail part?
No. So what we also found that, so basically this refers to kind of API driven websites. It's the more modern way to build a website. You can call it composable, where you basically don't have this one system that does everything. You plug all separate systems into the thing. So what it did say is it said, look, also on your website, You say your Contentful partners, Storyblock partners, Agility CMS partners, all these CMSs that are headless. So he goes, and well, we figured you know headless stuff, and you have a partner page on Contentful's website. It went and started triangulating a bunch of stuff as well. So there's more to it than that simplicity, but it's kind of like,
That's where you had to start, right?
yeah, we needed to say something, and then it went kind of validated it, right?
I am the best because I said so.
As I said, so Wikipedia page really important too. Even though there seems to be more chatter that Reddit doesn't matter, I don't believe that. I think everything matters, and that there is like no one knows a secret guidebook of what to do to get found. You just keep trying stuff, but even like the LLMS text for your site, why not have it there? It's just like a little bit of code, robots see, and they understand what your site's about. If they're not looking at it, it's fine. But you just kind of dedicated a couple hours a week to making your overall kind of AEO performance better, and you slowly get there.
Well, but to your point, are you advising clients about being patient? That this is not, there's no quick fixes. This is, and it's a cumulative thing. So as you said, well, we got some clutch reviews. We made sure that AI was noticing or was identifying who we partnered with, where the backlinks from our partners were, etc. Like all of it in combination. But again, not done in a day. There's no shortcut to it. It's
Dude, yeah, I think you just tapped into a concept that is occurring where the hype of AI is what people are understanding is that AI allows you to do things more quickly and it's a shortcut. It's not actually. AI is best used when you spend an excessive amount of time up front and you only get the reward after you peel all the potatoes for 17 hours. And that's where the emphasis should be. This is a great tool, but you got to earn it. Like not enough folks have that approach.
You want killer mashed potatoes? You
Yeah.
got to do some peeling.
Dude, you got to do some peeling. You got to wait at 20 degrees for 7 hours.
So very true. Well, because you were talking about, as a headless website and all these different components in a sense being called upon at various points as required, but taking it up a level to kind of just this idea of content operations with the CMS at the core. Talk to us about like the best practices, architecting that in an optimal way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think to some folks, this is new language. It's kind of always been the lexicon of enterprise content where we see content publishing it's a practice, your content operations. How do you research content, create it, edit it, get it approved, run it through translations, through legal, through regulatory compliance, and somehow push it up to your publishing system, whether it's your website or a kiosk or a watch or an iPad, like whatever you're doing with it at the end of the. So then we kind of have the concept of content is running through a supply chain. And those are just kind of the points that I mentioned. And right now, organizations are starting to look at their content that way. Marketers are realizing their publishers like, wow, we got like all of these disparate kind of groups creating content through different standards and guidelines. And so I guess the service to help organizations with is really organizing those operations, putting performance goals against them to be more optimized, the best use out of their teams, streamlining. Because a little mini challenge out there is AEO likes fresh content, right? So there's an emphasis on publishing more. But what's the fine line before you just start publishing for the sake of publishing? You want to have your story to tell. And yeah, so I think that's the big picture of how do we put tooling in, not necessarily AI, it can be just workflow automation kind of stuff to get everything running smoothly from a content.
You want to be publishing valuable content because you want it to be sticky, not AI-driven slop to serve the AEO engine or AEO search stuff for discoverability. But then people show up going, well, I found you, but I didn't find much.
Yeah.
Well, and is AI helping with points of failure in that content supply chain? Is it finding points of failure or actually potentially creating more points of failure?
Yeah, I think that like from the AI perspective, we'll build out kind of a diagram of all the content going on. So let's say you're a hospital and you have 20 authors, a whole bunch of kind of language editors, some legal, some compliance guys. There's probably 50 people involved in a piece of content from origin to going live on the site, And so how do you get
especially in that kind of industry? It makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we actually system diagram that out. Here's the supply: ideas, content, copy, metadata schema, copy, LinkedIn, where does it all go? So that AI can kind of take a look at that diagram and go, hey, here's how I'd re-architect all of this going on so we can streamline stuff. Basically, that turns into some kind of backbone of the workflow. We use N8N for that kind of stuff. AI can generate the JSON to set up the entire N8N workflow. Cool. Then we just got to go put in all of our credentials through that workflow. And AI is in little bits and pieces of it. It could be the first round of translation. Then it goes to a human and they do a final edit. But that's kind of managing that flow of content all the way to you get an email when it's ready and the senior editor sees the copy in an email and there's a button that says publish to website, and it then goes through kind of an MCP server or webhooks and pop, content goes up on the site and it's live. Not just save like 4 hours maybe for that one workflow, and maybe there's 20 workflows, 4 hours times 20 a week. You start to see some real savings from an enterprise perspective.
We'll be back in a moment. And now, a word from our sponsor. Social media has become an imperative for almost every business. Discover how to successfully implement an effective social media strategy that is supported and integrated throughout every part of your organization with this essential book from our host, Andrew Jenkins, Social Media Marketing for Business, Scaling an Integrated Social Media Strategy Across Your Organization, is now available from Amazon or KoganPage.com. Now, back to the show.
Well, and assuming you get them to the point where like content operations is a well-oiled machine, increasingly, like for instance, in AI search, now there's this talk about LinkedIn citations, and I'll tie that back to companies and their visibility. A LinkedIn company page, when it publishes content, only reaches approximately 2% of its followers. So you want employees sharing your content. Where does the content operations, the content management system potentially serve employee advocacy and help sort of reduce friction, if at all?
It's a really good use case, actually. So as part of that big supply chain we were just talking about, let's go back to the hospital idea. There can be a node that says, okay, now create a LinkedIn post supporting the company's LinkedIn post for every employee in the organization and push it up into Buffer. Cool. Maybe there's an editor that goes through all of those things and signs off before it goes live or not. So there can be a great benefit to that, because if you're in a hospital, you could have like an X-ray technician dude be part of your employees of the hospital, and they don't have time to write stuff, nor to write it very well because they're not interested.
Right.
And now
and it doesn't always have to be the hospital administrators that are more visible. I mean, if we put it into a more, I'll call it, more client-facing sales point of view, oftentimes it's the client-facing, more front-end, not the C-suite, that have the relationships. But to your point, don't necessarily have time, aren't sure what to say. And if you can enable it, and I don't want to use the word automate, because even if you enable it such that they can tweak it a bit, personalize it, but 90% of the heavy lifting is done for them. And it's now sitting in their Buffer, or it's in their inbox for them just to move over to LinkedIn, whatever it might be. Again, it goes back to reducing the friction.
Yeah, and we kind of see it as velocity. Like let's short circuit some of the jumps between the nodes of the operations, but we're not just deploying unedited stuff. But we were chatting earlier before we got on the show here about this idea where like there was an application process and the folks didn't want AI responses. I'm like, it's 2026. You're going to get AI responses, but you want the craftsmanship of the prompt to be, when you have AI speaking on your part, to be earned, right? And crafted.
Well, I just went through the exercise of export or downloading all of my LinkedIn history. 24 years of LinkedIn history. And then I went and data mined it, and I now have a voice and tone guide based on 24 years of being on LinkedIn. Now, am I going to automate output for LinkedIn? Not completely. Am I going to use it to help expedite writing something for LinkedIn while still maintaining my voice? Absolutely, because AI is making us all more productive when properly applied.
Yeah.
But it goes back to what you're saying. I went through the front end effort of peeling the potato of the LinkedIn research such that now going forward, I can make mashed potatoes much faster.
Absolutely. And I know you've given me some questions to consider just in case like space out and don't know what to say next. But what you got me thinking about from an existential perspective is, okay, everything's optimized, everything's dialing in, everyone's creating everything. There was like this Dr. Seuss book from way back when that was the story about this dude that had this star on his belly and he was the only one. And then all these other kind of folks wanted to get a star on their belly, and then they made a machine so everyone had stars on their belly. Then there was one guy without, and then there was like, hey, that guy's cool. He doesn't have any stars. What are we going to do when everyone's creating perfect content all the time? And like, what are we actually doing all of this for? You got to kind of wonder about that. Like, you got to wonder about all your other life choices and how you think and feel about things and where you belong in society and stuff. But
when you think back to like the first time I went to university, typewriter. The next time I went to university, word processor. The next time I went to university, laptop. And so
yeah,
I sort of see this as somewhat of an industrial revolution, which, it had positive things about it, negative things about it. This is, I think, moving a lot faster than the industrial revolution. But the things that we can do, the prospect of curing cancer because we can now research at such a grand scale. Anyway, there's still some philosophical reflections that need to happen.
I think for us, being generally in the marketing space, it's really where AI for the masses has the most impact outside of kind of the academics. And that's a different category of using AI. But we get a lot out of it in our life. Like I kind of we build big websites. So we're coding with AI. We're designing, like we're really got these great tools for us right now. And that's going to become more readily available for all kinds of folks. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's been a few groups that have been the greatest beneficiaries at the beginning. Others, it'll come around to. Diet, exercise, whole variety of just sort of everyday life things that can be positively impacted. And as we continue our conversation around AI, you've got something called Dot Fusion Agentic. Before you tell me what it is, tell me what it isn't, or like what it's not promising.
It is not promising perfection. It is promising a lot of joy and fascination. And that's our kind of statement that we realize that we want to be ahead of the curve and get ready for the transition. We've been using AI in our coding practice for 5 years since Cursor and these other tools that were helping. Basically it would finish your line of code. Now it kind of tells you what you should write next, and it's evolved a lot. But we really wanted to figure out like what does that model look like where everything we do is agentic, simply because we're in the space where we actually can do that. Like for example, one of our partners is Storyblock. It's a headless content platform. Like a year ago, it would take a developer, probably 2 devs, to set up an instance, create some components, connect it to an edge network like Vercel or Netlify, get it all configured and set up kind of thing. Now, 3 hours, non-technical person using Claude Code and some really great prompts through MCP does all that stuff. So we can actually deliver at enterprise scale, really using agents. But to your other point just a little bit ago about patience, the engineering now is in the prompts. And once you get them right and those workflows right, they're repeatable and they're pretty predictable. But that's why I was saying there's a lot of fascination, and you still get like some completely wacky stuff happen. Which,
right.
It's cool.
But you've shortened the build cycle, but what does some of these new capabilities mean for ongoing maintenance? And is it easier, less complex? To your point, doesn't need to involve a dev necessarily.
It's absolutely insane. Like we can just do kind of a scheduled entire GitHub repository normalization of, and just clean everything at once. I was speaking with a guy from Crafter CMS, whose whole CMS is a revolutionary different way of architecting things, where typically CMSs need a database with the content in them. This whole CMS just references Git. Like it's all structured, it's all files, it's like beautifully fast and seamless. So when you're using Git, which AI loves because it's structured data and documents, it's so fast. So it has less hallucination when you're dealing with code and math, because it's just really good at that. And those are the facts. It's where you get creative, where it simply hallucinates because you haven't prompted it well enough. Like it just doesn't know about this little area of creative opportunity where sometimes it's just doing its own thing, which I guess
Well, and how do you deal with this tension with clients about, because we can produce more content faster, and in some cases, better content, or in many cases, better content, how do you strike that balance between just because you can doesn't mean you should,
Yeah.
and to use it appropriately and wisely to make the kind of content you should be making serve the AI god, so to improve AI-based discovery, that kind of thing? How do you sort of help them navigate this new world?
And it's tricky. So it's like, okay, why are you creating content? All right, we're creating content because we have something interesting to say. We're creating content because we want to be discovered, and we hear that best practices are to be producing frequent content. And we're creating content because our customers need it. Okay, it's an updated manual for an engine or a specification or something like that. Or we're creating content because we need to present our brand in a discerning way, right? So brands change every once in a while, maybe not the fundamentals, but it's campaign driven content. It's time, and we got cool shoes, and that there's all that. That's kind of the content that doesn't stick around for very long. It's more we'll call it campaign content in whatever form. So even when you get to that point, there's 4 buckets of stuff. That's a lot of work to do. But at the end of the day, I do like the idea, and it is kind of like a little bit frustrating that I don't have a great answer for it. Is like, what happens when you have all the content you need? What do you do? I'm not sure about that. Yeah, we should have a whole episode about that.
Well, it's kind of the what happens when the dog catches the car.
Yeah. Okay. So now what? Now what? So you could say like LinkedIn is campaign content. You just kind of continuously have a presence there. But at what point in time do you start recycling the stuff that you have from 24 years ago? I don't know. It's the blast from the past content. Check this out.
Right.
20 years ago.
Well, there's also been the talk about how the LLMs have learned on content. And if you're using LLMs to create content, you end up that there's the risk of degradation because it's training on material. So there was a peak where it was still training on historical, I'll call it high quality content. And then if there's validity to AI slop that is now becoming the new repository of content that it's being trained on, does that mean that AI slop is leading to our demise? I don't know.
In some way, it is. For those of you who are on LinkedIn a fair amount, mostly B2B folks, you've probably noticed over the last couple of months, things have really changed. You're getting posts at the top of your feed that were from a month ago.
Yeah, because it's pushing relevance over recency.
It's pushing relevance over recency. And I've been doing experiments with hand drawing stuff and taking a picture of my hand drawings, and they get a lot of impressions. So I think, which is cool, because what that says to me, and I think this is just good for humanity, is to be creative. Being creative.
It just means I can put my crayons to use.
For your crayons to use, or be creative in your prompt engineering. Maybe that's the theme of all of this stuff is, okay, we're going through the swap phase because everyone's excited and we're all using new tools, and that's totally cool. Now, how do we get back to creativity, being interesting? But essentially, it's about you're creating content to maintain or get new business. You're serving your market, or you're trying to get new folks to know you.
Well, I've applied creativity. So I've used Nano Banana to create fun images. So I've found success in infusing my content with humor, not with every post, but just to break things up also. But I'm leveraging AI. So I use Nano Banana, and I created an image of me as Time Man of the Year or Person of the Year on the day that Time announced the real Person of the Year. And it took off. And another one was, what if email was an Olympic sport? And it rendered me with a gold medal or an Olympic medal around my neck and a scoreboard behind me. Like, it was hilarious. And I'm not patting myself on the back, but people responded to it.
Yeah.
But it was also highlighting everyone hates email. And one of the good ones that performed was it wasn't me in the image. I created this person with multiple right arms, shaking their hand like a salesperson. And I said, what automated outreach on LinkedIn looks like. And it was speaking to a problem on LinkedIn where people have basically delegated outreach on LinkedIn to a bot, which you wouldn't do in real life. You're not going to make cold calls or allow someone else to make allow a bot to make cold calls on your regard. So we can use AI to draw attention to, I'll call it, fundamental issues that we're facing. And that, I think, is a good use of AI. It doesn't perpetuate the AI slop and things like that, as long as we're connecting these fundamental issues that we deal with as business people and so on. So that still, has to be figured out. But, well, and that leads me to just in our closing time, a question about, what are you still curious about, paying attention to? I don't want to say concerned, but just like, what are you keeping an eye on in the space looking ahead?
I think what's going on, like right now, just like from a features and functions perspective, especially with the Moltbot, OpenClaw, that whole kind of fiasco, what's going on, what it did is it really set the tone for our next wave of having our closed agentic stacks running on our own environments, running our own little kind of either personal LLMs or our business LLMs. When you get into enterprise, they're already closed garden. Everything is just their LLM, no training to the big kind of mass tools. So I think you're going to see a bunch of stuff like we were talking about, the Perplexity computer, Moltbot. I think this whole thing, all the big guys are going to have their own kind of...
NVIDIA's announced something.
Yeah.
A more secure version of...
Yeah, everyone's kind of jumping onto that. So that's kind of like the power user stuff. I really still think that we're not past the basics of really great prompt engineering. I don't think people realize the patience you need to get good stuff going. And I think that should be the next wave and add creativity to it. Frankly, like what it's doing, like any kind of mass cultural movement, there's beauty in the counterculture. So when the waves smash against the shore, there's a lot of cool stuff when it recedes for that moment of time. And we found that in like old school stuff, like cold calling. It's amazing. People don't get calls from a human that care about their business enough to call them up with a solution.
I actually said to someone recently, send them something by direct mail in a colored envelope.
Absolutely. Like get creative. Like maybe that's humanity, and we're creative beings, right?
Yes, we all still like to get mail. It
Yes.
makes us feel like this is just for me. Nobody else got the same email.
Straight up, man. Cool. So,
listen, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this, and I think our listeners will too.
Amazing. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to more chats.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Low Production High Value Show. Be sure to give us a rating and subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check out Volterra at volterradigital.com to learn more about how they can support your social media marketing.